Okay, I'm very excited to have Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, retired from the Army. My husband's also an Army veteran and retired as well. Scott, so thank you so much for being on the Sarah Carter Show. It means
Yeah.
so much to me. Yeah, I'm really excited because I've been talking about Afghanistan on the podcast for some time. It's a big part of my life. I was a journalist that covered the war there. I spent a good portion of my career while I was in Washington, D.C., not only covering the border, but covering Afghanistan and Iraq on the ground. And I just want to thank you so much for your service because as someone who witnessed it firsthand, witnessed our men and women in the battlefield, it was a really incredible experience that showed me how deep and how, I guess, how wonderful the men and women in our branch of service are, and the kind of sacrifices that were made are just, I don't think the American public really understands.
No, I think you're right, Sarah. Thanks for having me. And there is a lot of folks who don't fully understand the depth and breadth of commitment and service that goes with not just our service members, but also, as you know, our military families and what they've endured for years and years and years in the longest war in our nation's history, and journalists. I worked very closely with James Meek from ABC News and other reporters. Yeah. And
James,
a lot of service there as well, and a lot of miles and a lot of investment in skin in the game. So it runs deep for a lot of people, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. You said something, before we got on, and I want to go into what you're doing because I think it all plays into it, and I talked about your Underground Railroad in the intro, about, Operation Pineapple, and just, the commitment that you and other retired service members have to ensuring that our allies get out of Afghanistan and our American citizens. But there's a reason for that, isn't it, Scott? I mean, there's a reason why you all have dedicated so much of your time, why I am so focused on that. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because there's an emotional side to this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a very emotional side to it. I don't know if you want to set it up or however you'd like to do it. But, I think one of the things that I'm trying to do at this point in my life is, none of us saw this coming. I don't think, I'm retired. I've been retired for, almost a decade. And I have a business. I have a nonprofit myself. I have a film coming out about the war. That was all just basically shuttered and shelved when this happened. Everything was put on hold. My last kid that I was so excited about actually being part of him going to college, because I missed the other two, missed that one too.
Right.
Because we were dealing with the Afghan problem. And, that pales in comparison to what our Afghan families have gone through. But the point I'm trying to make is none of us saw this coming. None of us asked for this, but yet we're in it. And, there's a real cost to what's happened here, and a moral injury that I think our politicians and frankly, many civilians still don't understand.
Right. And Scott's talking about, so all of you out there who are listening, for a lot of us, Afghanistan, and maybe, has become an all-encompassing problem, because for the last 20 years of our lives, plus since September 11th, like Scott said, people have had skin in the game. Our young soldiers, their families, the people who lost their loved ones. I know for me, Scott, it was my husband, Marty. He was wounded in Afghanistan, lost his eyesight in Afghanistan, almost lost his life there. The times he was away from home, the fact that he believes and believed in what he did. He didn't even see this coming. None of his buddies saw this coming. I can tell you, people that were actually serving over there when it happened didn't even see that President Biden would just, and his administration would just make this kind of drastic withdrawal and allow the Taliban, a terrorist organization, to basically hold the perimeter of the airport, which was the Kabul International Airport, for the evacuations, and basically turn over Kabul to the Taliban. And I don't even think the Taliban expected it to be that easy. So this was really a shocker. And it's affected a lot of our soldiers, a lot of our service members. They feel betrayed. They feel as though what was the last 20 years all about? They were trying to protect our country and did protect our country from terrorists. But now they're dealing with this kind of like feeling of trauma, like there's no one listening. There's no, where do we go from here? How do we handle this if they come back? I mean, are you seeing that right now with the men and women that have served that you're dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing it and I'm actually feeling it myself. I mean, I think all things in life start with, like a personal level. And I believe that, for me, when my friend Nizam, an Afghan commando, was in duress, that was all I really thought about was how can we help get him to safety? And that's what started the whole thing for me. And a group of fellow Green Berets and ABC reporter James Meek and Mike Waltz's staffer, that was our little team. And there were plenty of teams doing this kind of work. You're doing this kind of work.
Right.
But it was very personal. It was a friend. And it was a friend who had shown up for me in combat. It was a friend who had demonstrated his commitment to us in combat. And, frankly, it's how we're wired as military and military families. You just don't leave people behind. And I think the other thing for me, Sarah, was that I don't think I could have handled one more moral injury in my life. I've got enough moral injuries that have emanated from a war, led by politicians. Frankly, none of the administrations really overwhelmed me in how they prosecuted the war. I mean, seriously, if I'm being honest, they were all very underwhelming compared to the quality of leadership of our men and women in the trenches. And I just didn't want another moral injury. I couldn't deal with the thought of Nizam being left behind and killed. And so, that's what drew me into it. But now, we helped him get to safety, but there are tens of thousands more that we made a promise to that aren't. And I think it's had a very, very profound effect on on the veteran population. Even Vietnam veterans are watching Saigon fall twice. And I think it's had a profound effect on our veterans and our military families and our Gold Stars in ways that we don't even fully understand yet.
I know that what you're saying is absolutely true. There are Gold Star families that I've been in contact with, people that are just devastated, that have wondered, they question, they say, was it worth my husband's life?
Right.
Was it worth his life on the battlefield? What just happened right now? What's going to happen 10 years from now? Are my kids going to be asked to fight this same war 10 years from now because somebody decided not to do the right thing because they just evac out of this country in such a way that they left everyone behind? And now I feel the same way too. I got my friend Salim out. There was another friend of mine who we were able to get out, and now the rest of their families being left behind. I love the way you said it. This is like, it's a moral issue, and you don't want to deal with this again. You don't want to deal with another issue like this, another moral issue like this. It tears at your soul. But I agree with you on one thing that I haven't heard anyone else say. You've said it. I was not happy with any administration while I was covering this war. I felt they were constantly lying to the American people about the realities that were going on the ground. They hid from the American public the sacrifices made by you and others who served in the war. I remember being at Bagram, and I would see the coffins come down, and I would hear, the bugle playing, and I would see the coffins getting ready to be loaded up on the aircraft of our men and women. And I would say, Commander, why can't we show this to the American people? Why can't we show them the sacrifices that are being made? They did not want that public. They just, and it started with Bush, where Bush said, we're going to take care of it. You guys go to the mall and go shopping. Right. No, that isn't the way you handle a war, right? No. It's everybody together, everybody vested in taking care of our country and fighting these terrorists.
That's well said, Sarah. And when I wrote my book, Game Changers, back in 2013, about the local program that special operators were doing in the villages called Village Stability Operations, I pointed out that every administration that came through, frankly, just didn't take the time to get deep enough on the problem. It was very casual. It was very amateurish in how they approached it. And if I'm being candid, most of our senior officers, I believe, showed up at a level where they focused on Kabul, and anything beyond where the pavement ended, they had no game in what was going on in Afghanistan. And it was really the people at the tactical and operational level that fully or better understood the problem. And the other thing that I think is really bothering me right now is that as we go forward, so, you had this particular administration made a conscious decision to not honor the promise that we had made to our Afghan allies, and frankly left quite a few American citizens behind. And it was the veteran population, for the most part, and the military family population who looked at this and said, okay, fine, nobody else is coming, I'll do it. And we picked up our cell phones and we started working together to find ways to try to guide and shepherd our Afghan friends to some kind of safety, if not freedom. And the problem now, though, is this, and this is where I think a lot of citizens and politicians, we need their help. People like you who've been on this problem from the very beginning, you're on a 911 dispatch call and you're the dispatcher, and you've been on the call for a month, and you are the dispatcher that is assisting a family who is being murdered one by one, and you're staying on the line with them as this is occurring. You have no shift relief, and right before you take the call as a dispatcher, your supervisor says, hey, we're not sending anybody, so just do the best you can and just keep their morale up, okay? Like, that's what you've been given. That's what, and so the question becomes, what is the effect long term on our veteran population and these other shepherds? How does this end? Like, how does this end? Like, how do we take this to a place where we don't severely traumatize? The Afghan problem alone is horrific. But let's not forget the people on the other end of the line that have no choice but yet to stay in the game and to continue to try to bring hope, right? But that's what I'm concerned about. No one's talking about that. No one's talking about our veterans, the people that are on the other line. I got to tell you, emotionally, it has been traumatizing. Yes.
There's times where I know you've gone through it, where I'm on the phone with someone, and I remember having to tell this woman who was an American citizen, they just called me back after they told me, they being the State Department, tell her that she can't bring her sister and her sister's 3 children who were SIVs, whose husband had been killed fighting with us. They have to stay behind. Yeah. She can come and her husband can come. Then I got a second call saying, hey, guess what? Tell her she can't bring her husband because he's not an American citizen. Just tell her she can come. And I'll never forget what she said to me after she had cried for hours. I called her back and I said, I can't believe I'm making this phone call, but they're asking me to tell you that you have to leave your husband behind. And you are the only one that can come through the gates of Kia, through Kabul International Airport. And she said, you can tell President Biden, you can tell whoever told you that I don't abandon my family, that I will not abandon my husband the way that they abandoned me. I'm an American citizen. Am I not an American citizen? You can't say it better than that.
Right.
And that trauma, she eventually came through with her husband, but that trauma that she went through, it's still ongoing for so many American citizens and people with green cards. But the people on the other line, you and the soldiers and the veterans and the wives and the reporters like James Meeks and others who are on the line in Congress, like my friend Charles and others, we're living with that every single day.
Yeah.
What does the State Department say about that? What are they even doing?
Yeah.
Are they even negotiating with the Taliban, Scott? Are they even trying to get Americans out? Or is it just us, random citizens and veterans?
I think right now, honestly, if I'm laying it out, I think the bulk of the State Department's focus is on American citizens and legal permanent residents, and anything else is on the private sector. and
Right.
and I think that's where we are. And one of the things that we're trying to do right now is there are so many at-risk populations, Sarah, and you know this very well. There are, whether it's the LGBTQ community or whether it's female prosecutors and judges or
Right.
children who pursued the arts. I mean, and then of course, and this is one of the ones that I'm passionate about all those, but one of the areas where I'm really focused right now is our Afghan Special Operations Forces, those partners.
Right.
They fought until the last bullet. They fought until the bitter end, even when their president and their generals took bribes and abandoned them. They kept fighting, and they never had an opportunity to apply for a visa or anything else because they were too busy fighting.
Right.
And, I believe that it needs to be congressional law that any Afghan who went through the School of Excellence as a commando, Afghan Special Forces, they should have an immediate visa to the United States of America and their family. Because
are you pushing this, Scott?
We are.
You pushing this with Congress?
We're
That's
ramping
fantastic.
up. Yeah, we're ramping up right now, and we're getting ready to pursue this hard. And it's not because that category of Afghan isn't any better or any worse, but they did fight until the bitter end, and they never had an opportunity to apply for anything.
That's right.
And they deserve a level of advocacy from their partners. We recruited them, we trained them, we advised them. And so we are going to go to the military members of Congress, and we're going to make this a bipartisan issue. And it is one of many at-risk categories that need to be addressed. We're going to start here, and then we're just going to keep going. But, as soon as we can get that designation, I think there's some things we can do. But right now, they don't even have a status to leave the country.
I absolutely agree with you. I'd love to be a part of that. Anything you need from me, just let me know.
Thank you.
And my husband as well, who had many served with him. And by the way, was an Afghan commando and interpreter that helped get my husband off the battlefield when he was wounded. So I think that we will be right by your side on that. What do you say to Americans who really don't understand this? What do you say when Americans, and I hear this a lot, and a lot of it comes from, I think, misinformation, not understanding what Afghanistan really was like on the ground, not understanding the relationships that we built, and actually a cultural divide. You know what I mean? What people here don't really understand Afghans, and you hear all these crazy stories, that are coming from, and some of them are true, but coming from the refugee camps. What can you say beyond what I've already said earlier in my opening to let people know this is the American thing to do? This is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd like to pivot a little bit on that and share something with you that I think could really help people who are asking that question. Okay. Before any of this started, Sarah, I founded a nonprofit, my wife Monty and I did, called The Hero's Journey. And the purpose of that nonprofit was to help warriors and their families find their voice and tell their story as they transitioned home from service. I almost took my own life after I transitioned. It was a really bad transition, and it was really oral storytelling that helped me come out of that dark place and repurpose my scars and struggles in the service of others. And what I've found, and I believe this, is that storytelling is one of the most impactful ways that we can heal and inform.
Right.
We can heal our own population, but we can also inform. Societies for thousands of years have been using storytelling to help civilians understand this vast gap of war that it's impossible to understand unless you go through storytelling. Okay, so we were in the process before Afghanistan fell. I had written a play called Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret. And the reason why I wrote it was I wanted to help heal and validate our veteran and military family population by going through the journey of one Green Beret sergeant and his family in the longest war in American history in Afghanistan. And I wanted to inform civilians on a very personal level what it looks like to go to war day after day, month after month, year after year, while the rest of the country goes to Walmart. And we did that. We toured 16 cities. It was super powerful. And then COVID hit, and we've been working to turn it into a film, and it's coming out on this Veterans Day. But I say all that because what my experience has been is you watch this film in 2 hours and 20 minutes, you fully understand why our veteran population rushed into the breach to honor this promise. You will see up close and personal what it means to serve at that level, what it means to a military family to sacrifice to the degree that they do, and the levels of friendship that exist between our Afghan partners and us, and who they really are at a human level. And I'm excited about that because I think it's going to help people understand. Because I get it. I mean, I know, especially young people, they're like, I don't understand what's happening right now. And then we're going to put all of the proceeds towards veteran trauma. So that's the first thing I would say. And I'll shoot you a link, Sarah, and you and your husband can watch it ahead of time. But we're putting 100% of the proceeds back into dealing with Afghan resettlement and veteran trauma. But I think we've got to tell the story. I don't think it's fair to just expect people to understand what 20 years of war or 10 years of war looks like to an American family when you've never seen it up close and personal.
I absolutely agree with you, Scott. You know, I'm so excited about your film. I'm so excited to watch it, and we'd be honored to watch it in advance. We'd be honored to wait and watch it with everyone when it comes out again. I was thinking about that when you were talking, how my husband, there was this moment, and you were talking about, you know, feeling suicidal, like right when you get out, and PTSD, and, you know, all the things that our soldiers go through. And, you know, my husband went through PTSD, and it's a tough thing to realize, wow, okay, this is why I'm reacting this way. I never knew that. This is why I feel this way. But when there was this moment where my husband met Saber, there's this Afghan friend of ours that was living out in Alexandria. He's still there. But Saber was wounded by the Taliban. They cut off a lot of his fingers. They threatened him. He got blown up. He really fought alongside us, a true hero, you know, fighting for his nation. And my husband was blinded. And I remember the first time that Saber saw my husband, and he realized he was blinded, and he said, "My friend, put your hand in my hand. You feel these missing fingers?" He said, "You and I are brothers. We're brothers in the same war, in the same fight against terror. You're my brother." And I want people to understand that at that moment, me watching that and seeing these two broken soldiers, you know what I mean, that are just amazing human beings, I was overwhelmed with this feeling of, like, in all of the horror of war, in all of the horror of everything that you and I witnessed, and you so much more than I probably have witnessed, there is that moment where it, like, transcends all these terrible things, where we find kind of a common ground with people that are completely different than us in so many ways, but in so many ways just the same, right? They want the same things for their children. They fought for their country, and it's tough, and now their country is overtaken by terrorists. But we all have some commonality, right? I mean, there's something there between us. We can find that. And that's why I think, like, people need to watch this film. I wanted to ask you something really quick, because this is a tough subject. What do you think our soldiers right now, the people that are dealing with this trauma right now, what do you think? You've been through it, others have been through it. What do you think they need to do? Where do they need to go? I mean, if they're feeling like, look, I don't know who to turn to, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go.
Yeah, so I would say, a couple things. First of all, I think is understanding that when what's happened with Afghanistan, it is, believe it or not, natural to feel what so many of us are feeling right now, that devastation, that frustration. What was it all for? And also to feel as if, like, the lifelines that you're giving to your Afghan partners, you have to do that. It's everything. There's no way that you can not do that. And all of those things are natural, and they're part of what we've gone through in this journey that we've been on. And to feel these kind of negative reactions, it's part of it. But I think the other thing that I would say to anyone listening to this who is going through a real emotional roller coaster as a result of the war, whether you're a military family, a Gold Star family member, or a veteran, whether you served in Afghanistan or not, is that, you do not have to, there is no written rule or unwritten rule that because you sacrificed and you served, that you're supposed to suffer. You know,
Right.
I mean, so many of us have residue from that journey and that life that we lived, and trauma and guilt and all of those things. But it is truly residue from the miles that we walked and the scars that we endured. But, you know, there is a way to process that residue and to deal with that residue the way that you deal with any other residue. And we are not condemned to a life of pain because we served. And I do not
100%.
subscribe to that. Yeah.
That's such a great way of putting it.
Yeah. And I think that there are a lot of protocols out there. You know, if we want to talk about trauma, if we want to talk about the emotional pain of survivor's guilt, all of those caustic, corrosive things that go with combat for both veterans and their families, there are a range of non-invasive, non-chemical protocols that treat those things as injuries, not illnesses. And, you know, some of them are not in the VA, but they're out there. And, you know, what I would say is, for starters, if you are in that place and you feel like you are stuck in that trauma loop, OperationAngelWing.org is a great place to start. This is a trauma interventionist nonprofit that works with our hero's journey. They work with us on the film, the play. You know, we would get triggered on stage telling the story. And what I learned in that process was that, you know, trauma or the scars that come from war, they're part of who we are. They're part of the residue. But, you know, you can either process and metabolize that residue, or you can leave it alone and it hardens and then it comes back to visit you, you know. And I think there was a paper written on residue. The article, the author escapes me. I'll get it for you, but it's phenomenal, man. I think there's a whole new pathway available to us as warriors and family members that no one's really talking to us about. And even with the Afghan situation, I think there's a path to healing and a path beyond the trauma that is available to us. And I hope that we'll take it.
And you're one thing that you said, it's like, this is residue, could be any kind of residue. It's not just about being a soldier. It's what the families went through. It's what the children have gone through. It's what the whole family unit goes through together. Do you think Pineapple Express, this rescue, has really helped maybe heal? And where are you guys at now with all the rescues? Because I think that's so important. And I don't want to let you go before I get the update on that.
Yeah, I think that it has. You know, Pineapple Express or Task Force Pineapple, as we were called, it was a nickname. It was a group of veterans and civilian volunteers who came in and did exactly what you did. I mean, that what we did, honestly, no different, no better than what all of the other wonderful veteran organizations did. Here's the only difference. This is the only difference. Is we got on I made a conscious decision, because I am a storyteller, to get on the national media, and I told the story. And I told the story for one reason, is that I wanted people who didn't understand to try and understand the significant power of what our combat veterans and our military family members were showing us in our darkest hour. That even when we think nobody else is coming from the government and politics, our combat veterans showed us what leadership looks like. And that's it. I mean, that's the only, we didn't do anything any more extravagant or advanced than any other volunteer group out there. We have struggled. We have failed. We right now, we are ready to pull our hair out because it's so hard to get people out. But you know what? It all comes down to, at least for me, was sharing the story of what our veteran population did to lead when nobody else would. And that's the difference.
And we're still And we're still going to need that. And we're going to still need that leadership, because this is not over. I want everyone out there to understand this is not over. What's happening in Afghanistan, what happened over the last 20 years, it's not over. There are still enemies of this country. There are people out there that are intent on doing us harm, and we have allies in places that really need us, and we can't leave anyone behind, and you never did that, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. You should be honored for that and for your storytelling. Where can people go again to watch your film that's coming out, and will we see your play again? I mean, now that COVID, I'm guessing I want to see this. I love the theater. I would love to see the show. Are you going to get it going again, or are you just sticking with the film?
Well, check this. So I would have to ask my wife, Monty, about, getting back on the road and act. I learned to act at age 50. So you talk about a midlife crisis. But after I wrote the play, and so the film, if you go to lastoutfilm.com, you can go ahead and sign up. It's going to be on Amazon Prime, Apple TV. And again, 100% of our proceeds are going to go to helping with the Pineapple effort. And a lot of that is veteran trauma. But also, and this gets to your point, is one of the things I'm super excited about, and we were already working on this before the Afghan problem happened, is we're going to open a veteran performing arts center, our Hero's Journey nonprofit, a veteran performing arts center called Better Ground in Tampa, Florida. And it is going to be a place where warriors, first responders, and their families can come and share their stories on stage, whether it's through music or poetry or plays. We're going to run storytelling workshops, trauma sessions, trauma intervention sessions. And we're going to, have all kinds of national programs, online programs. And we're actually going to open this in January of 2022. So the proceeds are going to help to go to that as well. So, lastoutfilm.com. If you go watch it, I swear to you, what'll happen is if you're a veteran, you'll see your journey play out on stage. And if you're a family member, you'll feel like your voice is being told. If you're a civilian that's trying to understand what's happening, you'll leave that film with a much better understanding of why these veterans are scrambling to honor this promise. And you'll feel it in your heart. And that's my promise.
Wow, Scott, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I can't wait to watch it. I'm going to have my husband watch it. So lastoutfilm.com.
That's right.
Lastoutfilm.com, everyone. Please support your veterans. Remember, over the last 20 years, it's true, we've been out there enjoying our life, and we have not faced the enemy in the United States. 9/11 happened, but remember, it was all the men and women like you, Scott, who were out there, like my husband, fighting the bad guys on foreign soil that kept them from coming here. And I never want you to forget that. You made a difference. I don't care if they pulled out and evac'd the wrong way. What you guys did over there for the last 20 years saved lives over here. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. I hope you come back.
Thank you. Thank you, Sara. And thank you to your husband. We're so grateful for your sacrifice, and we're not going to give up. We're going to keep working, safe passage, resettlement. Last thing I'll say is, there's a lot of Afghans coming here that are going to rely on the American spirit and our sense of community and outreach to help them. They've been through a lot, man. They've been through so much. Let's show them what it looks like to come home and help bring them home at a community level. There's a lot we can do in that regard towards resettlement.
Yeah, you'll never have a better friend Afghans are very loyal people.
Yes,
they're great people. They're just the best. And I know, because we have a family here right now that we just love and adore, and they become a part of our family. So yeah, please help out, reach out, just say, hey, thank you for what you've done. Bring them a pie if they're like living next door to you, or just say, thank you so much for what you've done for our country, and do the same for all the soldiers out there. They really need to hear it, as well as all of our service members, not just our Army, not just our soldiers, but anybody you see serving our country. Please do that. Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate every moment with you, and I can't wait to have you back on.
Thanks, Sara. Means a lot.